The invisible judgment. Have you ever held back from doing something important because you were afraid of what others might think? Have you ever hidden your opinion, suppressed a desire, passed on an opportunity, or shaped yourself to fit expectations that weren't even your own, just to avoid upsetting someone? If so, you're not alone. Most of us have worn masks to please. We've silenced our own voice to dodge the discomfort of judgment. This isn't weakness, it's human. From an early age, we're trained to seek approval. The applause, the smiles, the praise. These become rewards that shape our behavior. But over time, this constant pursuit turns into a prison. And the cruelest part is, this prison has no visible bars. It's invisible, silent, yet persistent. It lives in the fear of being misunderstood. In the anxiety of making a mistake in public. In the hesitation before speaking up. It's there in the glance that seeks approval. In the ever-present thought, what will they think of me? This fear of others' opinions is a thief of authenticity. And when you live trying to fit into someone else's mold, something inside you begins to fade. The flame that represents your truth grows dim. You stop being the author of your own story, and instead, become just an actor in a script written by others. But here's a powerful truth: other people's opinions are reflections of them, not of you. Every person sees the world through the lens of their own story. Their beliefs, fears, and experiences. No one sees you objectively. What they think of you says more about their inner world than it does about your worth. So why hand over control of your life to judgments that have nothing to do with who you really are? You can't control what others think. But you can choose how you respond to it. Think of the opportunities you've missed just because you imagined someone would laugh. The ideas you shelved because you thought they weren't good enough. The versions of yourself you never explored because you were afraid of disappointing someone. This kind of self-censorship is fueled by an illusion, the idea that if you please everyone, you'll finally be accepted, loved, respected. But the truth is, even if you do everything right, you will still be criticized. Because pleasing everyone is impossible, and trying to do so only leads to frustration. Now imagine, just for a moment, what your life could look like if you let go of that fear. If you spoke your truth. Acted with spontaneity. Chose with courage. What would it feel like to wake up every day with the lightness of not needing to prove anything to anyone? This isn't about ignoring people, it's about not abandoning yourself for them. There's a big difference between respect and submission. You can listen to others without losing yourself. You can learn from criticism without devaluing yourself. You can be empathetic without erasing your identity. And all of this begins when you shift the central question of your life. Instead of asking, "What will they think of me?" try asking, "What do I think of me?" That simple switch puts you back at the center of your own experience. When you start truly listening to yourself, something shifts. The fear might still be there, but it stops driving. It becomes a passenger. And you, with your hands steady on the wheel, begin to choose your own path. Remember this, no one thinks about you as much as you imagine. People are too busy worrying about their own insecurities. And even when they do think of you, most opinions last just seconds. But the decisions you make to please others can shape decades of your life. Other people's opinions may be noise. But your inner voice should be your compass. This is the first step toward your freedom, recognizing the power you've handed over to the judgment of others, and gently, starting to take it back. In the next chapters, we'll go deeper. We'll uncover where this fear comes from, how it conditions us, and most importantly, how to break free from it, without fighting the world. Because true revolution doesn't begin when everyone approves of you. It begins when you finally approve of yourself. The approval trap. Now that you've started to question the power you've given to others' opinions, it's time to understand why this desire to please is so hard to let go of. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was cultivated, and often reinforced, for years. From a young age, we learn that being accepted means being loved. We grow up hearing that we should be good, that we must not disappoint, that saying no is rude, that we should handle everything. Every moment of validation we received often came with an external reward, praise, a smile, approval. Over time, this conditioning shapes how we relate to the world. We come to believe that in order to be worthy of love, we must meet other people's expectations. This leads us into a subtle, but powerful, cycle of self-censorship. We start measuring our words, hiding our vulnerabilities, wearing social masks, living in fear of saying the wrong thing, of seeming inadequate, of being rejected. And the more we live like this, the more we lose touch with our essence. This mechanism is a silent trap. Because it seems to protect, but it actually imprisons. It seems to bring belonging, but it steals authenticity. It seems to create acceptance, but it feeds insecurity. And the cruelest part? The more you try to please everyone, the more you disconnect from yourself. And the more disconnected you are, the deeper the internal void grows, that uncomfortable feeling of, I don't know who I am anymore. Have you ever felt that? It's as if, in trying to be everything for everyone, you stopped being someone for yourself. And that void cannot be filled with more external approval. Because what's missing is not applause. It's truth. It's presence. It's self-acceptance. And here's a crucial turning point: pleasing everyone is not the same as being kind. More often than not, it's a sign of fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. But fear cannot be the compass that guides your choices. If you want to build a life that's light, authentic, and meaningful, you have to start saying no to what suffocates you, even if it upsets others. This isn't selfish. It's emotional responsibility. You are not here to live up to everyone's projections. You are here to live a life of purpose, of courage, of integrity. Dale Carnegie once said, "People rarely think about you, they're too busy thinking about themselves." And that phrase, though simple, is deeply freeing. It reminds us that most of the criticism we fear will never come. And even if it does, it says far more about the other person than it does about us. So, how do you escape the approval trap? Start by noticing the small moments when you betray yourself to please others. When you say yes while wanting to say no, when you smile while wanting to cry. When you feel guilty for resting. When you hide your opinion to avoid conflict. Notice that these small acts, though they may seem harmless, pile up. And that buildup drains you. A small daily betrayal of yourself slowly erodes your energy, your clarity, and your peace. Then, practice gentle honesty. You don't need to be harsh to be truthful. But you do need to be firm. Speaking your truth with love is one of the greatest acts of freedom you can cultivate. Whether it's expressing your limits, revealing your vulnerability, or simply showing who you truly are, without disguises. Of course, not everyone will like it. And that's okay. You don't need everyone's approval. What you need is your own. When you align with your truth, you attract more authentic connections, people who appreciate you for who you are, not for the role you play. And finally, remember, this is not about being rebellious, nor about turning your back on the world. It's about finding a stable center within yourself. A place of clarity, dignity, and peace, from which you can act, choose, and relate without losing yourself. This journey takes practice. It takes presence. But it begins with one decision: to stop living for acceptance, and start living for wholeness. In the next chapters, we'll explore how to cultivate that inner strength in practice. How to build emotional autonomy. How to act with greater courage, even in the presence of fear. Because that's where true freedom begins, when you realize you don't need anyone's permission to be who you are. The power of being who you are. Now that you've started to see through the trap of living for others' approval, it's time to turn your attention inward. Because true freedom doesn't come from rebellion, it comes from reconciling with who you truly are. But who are you when no one is watching? When there's no audience, no expectations, no pressure? That may be one of the most important questions you can ask. And the answer might not come right away, and that's okay. We spend so much time trying to please, to meet demands, to measure up, that we forget how to simply be. We lose the habit of listening to our own voice. We get used to acting out roles, following patterns, playing parts that we often never consciously chose. The result is an internal disconnection. A life that might look perfectly in place on the outside, but feels misaligned on the inside. That's why reclaiming your essence isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. And it's not about discovering a fixed, unchanging identity. It's about allowing yourself to be dynamic, imperfect, human, and still worthy of love and respect. It's about honoring your limits, your emotions, your pace. Being yourself doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. And that presence begins when you allow yourself to feel, without judgment. When you realize you don't have to shrink to fit in. When you understand that you don't have to apologize for being sensitive, intense, different, or complex. Maybe you learned that you needed to hide your fragile parts in order to be accepted. Maybe you believed that, to be loved, you had to be strong all the time. But that's an illusion. Your real strength doesn't lie in pretending nothing affects you. It lies in moving forward despite being affected. In showing up even when you're scared. In standing your ground, even if you're shaking. That's courage. That's authenticity. And authenticity doesn't mean saying everything you think without a filter. It means aligning what you think, feel, and do. It means living in coherence. And coherence has a price. Sometimes, it makes others uncomfortable. Because when you begin to assert yourself, you inevitably disturb the projections others had of you. You step out of the role they expected you to play. And that can rattle them. But the question is it worth living imprisoned in a version of yourself just to keep others comfortable? You weren't born to play a role someone else wrote for you. You were born to express your truth. And when you begin to do that, gradually, gently, firmly, something shifts. The energy you once used to maintain a mask is now free to create, to connect, to live with more lightness. You discover that you don't need to please everyone to be loved. That you don't have to be extraordinary to be worthy. That you don't need to hide to be accepted. And that awakening is liberating. Yes, it's a process. It takes practice, compassion, and patience. But it begins with small acts, saying what you truly think during a difficult conversation, choosing something that nourishes you, even if others don't understand, setting a boundary where before there was only concession. Each of these acts brings you closer to yourself. And the closer you are to yourself, the less power others' opinions have over you. Because at the end of the day, the opinion that matters most is your own. The one that echoes when you lay your head on the pillow. The one that stays with you when no one else is around. The one that gently asks, were you true to yourself today? That voice, when honored, becomes your guide. Your anchor. Your foundation. And slowly, you begin to realize that being yourself, even if it doesn't please everyone, is the greatest act of love you can offer the world. Because when someone lives their truth with integrity, they inspire others to do the same. And that's the cycle that truly matters. The more you allow yourself to be who you are, the more freedom you offer others to be who they are too. In the next steps of this journey, we'll explore how to cultivate this emotional autonomy in daily life. How to strengthen that internal foundation so you no longer rely on external validation. Because when you're supported from within, nothing outside can easily bring you down. How to build an unshakable inner foundation. Once you begin reconnecting with who you truly are, the inevitable question arises. How do I sustain this freedom in the real world? After all, it's easy to feel strong for a few moments, but how do you stay grounded when criticism returns, when comparisons tighten their grip, when the old fear of rejection knocks again? The answer lies in strengthening your inner foundation, slowly building an emotional structure that doesn't depend on applause to stay standing. But how do you do that? The first step is developing emotional self-awareness. This means learning to notice what you feel, without running from it, judging it, or rationalizing it away. Often, the worry about what others think hides a deeper insecurity, fear of not being enough, of not being loved, of being excluded. When you have the courage to look at these emotions with honesty, they stop controlling you. Because what controls you isn't what you feel, it's what you avoid feeling. When you allow yourself to feel, you allow yourself to heal. The second step is replacing judgment with curiosity. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" try asking, "What is this trying to show me?" When someone criticizes you and you feel hurt, the question shouldn't be, "How can I be accepted?" It should be, "What does this pain reveal about my own expectations?" This shift in perspective is powerful. It takes you out of the role of a victim and places you back in the role of the author of your life. You begin to live less on autopilot and more from conscious choice. The third step is practicing self-compassion daily. This doesn't mean making excuses or playing the victim. It means recognizing that you're in a process. That mistakes are part of growth. That you don't need to punish yourself every time you feel vulnerable. When you speak to yourself the way you would speak to a dear friend, your inner strength begins to grow. Self-compassion isn't weakness. It's emotional maturity. And the more you cultivate it, the less dependent you become on others' approval, because you're learning to approve of yourself, even in your imperfections. The fourth step is creating rituals of presence. We live in a fast-paced world where it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. Having daily moments to reconnect with yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes of silence, journaling, or conscious breathing, will keep you rooted in your own truth. These moments are like anchors. They remind you of who you are, even when the world tries to pull you back into the old script of approval seeking. The fifth step is choosing your company wisely. You don't need 1,000,000 followers. You need a few people who truly see you. Who don't demand a version of you that's not real. Who hold space for your authenticity. These kinds of relationships are rare, but they exist, and they're worth far more than any crowd that applauds a version of you that isn't true. And finally, remember this: you don't need to feel 100% confident before you act. Confidence doesn't always come first. Often, it follows action. The more you act in alignment with your truth, the stronger you feel. The more you take a stand, the more you realize you can handle the consequences. And that changes everything. You no longer need to live in fear of rejection, because you're no longer willing to reject yourself just to be accepted. You begin to understand that pleasing everyone is impossible, and that trying to do so is the fastest way to lose yourself. The unshakable inner foundation you seek isn't built on motivational quotes. It's built on daily choices. Choices of courage. Of presence. Of integrity. And the more you make these choices, the more you realize. Other people's judgment starts to matter less. Comparison loses its grip. And your peace, the kind that rises from within, begins to grow. That peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of clarity, clarity about what you value, what you want, and who you are. And when you have that, nothing outside of you can easily bring you down. Because your foundation is within, solid, alive, and real. In the next and final chapter of this journey, we'll bring everything together and explore how to live with true freedom, even in a world that constantly tries to convince you otherwise. Living in freedom, the path is yours. You've made it this far. You've walked through an inner journey of discovery, of questioning, of small steps that open space for something greater, true freedom, the kind that doesn't depend on what others think of you. Now comes the real question. How do you live that freedom every day, even in a world that insists on judging, comparing, and demanding your approval? The first step is understanding that freedom is not the absence of other people's opinions. You won't, and shouldn't, be able to control what others think. And that's actually liberating. Because if you can't control it, why spend so much energy trying? Freedom begins when you decide not to hand over the reins of your happiness to someone else's gaze. When you realize that the only value that truly matters is the one you give yourself, not the one the world tries to impose on you. But this decision, as simple as it sounds, requires practice. It takes courage to stand up for yourself, to say no when needed, to let go of what no longer serves, even if it brings discomfort. And that's when you understand something essential. Freedom is a constant act. It's not a final destination you reach once and for all. It's a daily practice of conscious choice. You can choose to care less about what doesn't matter. You can choose to invest your energy in what helps you grow, what brings you joy, what reconnects you with who you truly are. When you live this way, you'll notice the outside world still throws criticisms and expectations your way, but they no longer hit you the same. They lose power because your inner world is solid. Another essential element is authenticity. True freedom only blossoms when you stop hiding behind masks. When you stop trying to be what others want you to be. That can feel terrifying. Because being authentic often means confronting old fears, breaking away from outdated patterns, letting go of the need to be liked. But it's in that process that you find yourself, and in such a profound way that life begins to change color. You start attracting people who accept you just as you are. You begin to create opportunities that align with your values. You feel a lightness you may never have felt before. And even when fear shows up, you know what to do now. Welcome it. Breathe. Keep going. Because now you understand, you are bigger than your fear. Freedom also shows up in how you choose to spend your time and energy. In saying yes to what nourishes you, and no to what drains you. It's learning to respect yourself enough to set boundaries, with work, with people, with your own habits. When you set these boundaries, you protect your internal space. And that space is where your freedom grows strong. Finally, living in freedom means celebrating who you are, with all your imperfections, your victories, your contradictions. It means giving yourself permission to be human, to be vulnerable, and at the same time, to be courageous. It's understanding that others' opinions are just one piece of life's puzzle, not the whole picture. You are the artist of your existence. And now, with awareness and courage, you get to choose which colors to use. So, the next time that old anxiety creeps in about what others might think, remember. You already have everything you need to be free. Freedom begins here. Within you. And the path forward? It's yours to walk.